Beneath the facade of an unassuming house in a quiet neighborhood, a story unfolds that defies the boundaries of our understanding. Picture this: a woman, Doris Bither, grappling with forces unseen, her home a stage for phenomena that challenge the very essence of reality. Objects defy gravity, hurling themselves across rooms with ferocious intent. A chilling cold envelops spaces where warmth should reign, and invisible entities lash out, leaving marks on flesh and psyche alike. Imagine the terror of being assaulted by ghosts, of feeling the weight of unseen hands, of bearing witness to the impossible. Bright orbs of light darting with purpose, casting eerie glows that illuminate nothing but further mysteries. These are not mere tricks of the light or figments of an overactive imagination. They are witnessed by many, captured in whispers and photographs, leaving skeptics and believers alike grappling for explanations. As Doris's story unravels, so too does the veil that separates our world from what lies beyond. The very walls of her home seem to pulsate with an otherworldly energy, becoming a conduit for phenomena that science struggles to explain. Here, in this domain, the physical and the paranormal collide with consequences that are both fascinating and terrifying. And as we delve deeper, we're left with questions that burn as brightly as the mysterious lights themselves. What forces have claimed dominion over Doris Bither's home? Are they echoes of the past, manifestations of the mind, or something far beyond our understanding? Join us as we step into the heart of this enigma, where each twist and turn defies explanation, and the line between reality and nightmare is indistinguishably blurred. This is not just a tale of hauntings. It's a journey into the unknown depths of the human experience. Welcome to the mystery that is Doris Bither's life. Welcome to our story.
Welcome back to Retraced Echoes. As always, I'm your host. My name is Bert, and today's story, as you can hear in the narration, is going to be one that is filled with twists and turns. Now, if you're not listening to me on the YouTube machine, I still appreciate the fact that you're listening, but if you want to see some of the photos that I'm going to be talking about today, you're going to want to check out the YouTube video. And you can find that very easily wherever you're listening to your podcast by just going to the YouTube machine and looking up Retraced Echoes. But let's begin our story. It's definitely going to be one that is going to leave us kind of scratching our head. Also, I might just write a blog on some of the skeptical point of view, because there is a lot there that has some validity. This is one of those stories that I'm a little bit confused on, and there's both the skeptics and the believers that they fight back and forth. But let's stop talking about it, let's be about it. Let's go. Our story today begins in the heart of Culver City, California, where a single mother named Doris Bither raised her 4 children. Their life, it was far from ordinary, but it was about to take a turn into the realm of the paranormal. Now, from the outside looking in, it looked as though Doris, she had a pretty good life growing up. She was raised in an upper middle class family, but what many did not see from the outside is what she endured, which was a turbulent childhood shadowed by the presence of alcoholic parents and abuse within the walls of the home. Things hit the ceiling when she was a teenager. She became fascinated with the occult, as well as seances. Now, this caused a fallout with her family because they wanted none of this in their house. In their disgust, they cast her out. Doris found herself alone, separated from her family and navigating life without a safety net. And life, it was not kind to Doris in those years. Now, she also found love in the arms of various partners. Each relationship ended more bitter than the last. Each one also came with a fatherless child. 4, to be exact. Now, Doris, regardless of these relationships, was determined to raise them single-handedly, regardless of the instability that was in her life. Now, she needed to go somewhere for a fresh start, and she found an old, dilapidated house in a very rough neighborhood. Now, obviously, this is far from the ideal setting for a fresh start, but regardless, this was still a roof over their heads. After all, a house isn't always what makes a home. At least that's what some would say. Now, Doris and her children, ranging from the age of 6 to 16, would soon discover that there was something inside the house that wasn't going to let them have a home. In the dead of night, when shadows merged with the silence, scary meeting set the stage for a haunting that would add to the tale of Doris's life. There was a knock at the door, and when Doris answered it to greet it, she was faced with an elderly woman, her face weathered with unsaid warnings. Now, this was no ordinary visit. It was a harbinger of darkness yet to unfold. Doris, she was completely confused by the sight of the stranger at such a late hour. Now, the old woman's eyes told a tale that would soon form at her lips. She said that when she was a kid, her parents had bought the house, and as a child growing up in the home, she noticed some things that were, well, they were unsettling. Lights would flicker with no hand to guide them. Objects, they would dance to an invisible tune, her words hanging in the air like a chilling mist. She pleaded with Doris to flee with her children before something happened to her or her little ones. Then, as quickly as she appeared at the door, she had to leave. The old woman's words, they were cryptic yet terrifyingly clear, and it hinted at a presence so vile, so sinister, that it defied explanation. But let me ask you a question, the same one that I come to. Where was Doris supposed to go? It's not like money grows on trees. Also, how was Doris supposed to just believe some random old woman that appeared just out of nowhere at her doorstep? Would you have done the same thing? If you was in Doris's shoes, would you have taken the word of some old woman that just showed up on your doorstep? She's saying that she lived there before. As a kid, her parents bought the home, and I guess the first question I would ask the woman is, well, why did you leave? If you leave, who did you tell? She didn't even have an opportunity. Now, despite the urge to dismiss all the ramblings of a disturbed mind, Doris couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that would settle in her bones. For her, the ordinary became the extraordinary as objects around the house, much like the elderly woman had mentioned, began to move on their own. Doors creaked open in the dead of night, and Doris found herself becoming the target of unseen assailants. Doris had no one to turn to, no family to confide in, and the fear of judgment from around her was too much to bear. Doris, she decided not to say anything to anyone. The possibility of having your children taken away from someone who deemed her unstable, or potentially as a risk, was not something that she was willing to take. In a twist of fate, while Doris was out with her friends at a local bookstore, her ears caught a conversation that would create a new path for her. She overheard two men deep in conversation about an investigation into the paranormal that they had just conducted, one of which being none other than Carrie Gaynor. Now Doris, she walked right up to the men, told them about the haunting that her and the kids had been going through, as well as the ominous warning from the old woman before it all happened. She asked Carrie's help in understanding what was going on within the walls of her own home. Carrie was intrigued. He took down her contact information, said that he would talk it over with his partner, and he would reach right back out to her soon. True to his word, Carrie spoke to Barry Taff, a parapsychologist with an interest in the paranormal. Together, they both agreed to meet Doris, marking the date for August 22nd of 1974. Now, once they arrived at Doris's home on Broderick Street in Culver City, Carrie and Barry were shocked by what their eyes saw. The house was barely standing. It had been previously condemned twice by the city, and it was a glaring reflection of the chaos that surrounded Doris's life. Now, when Carrie and Barry started talking to Doris about what was going on in her home, they kind of hit a wall. Doris was usually outspoken about the hauntings, but she clammed right up on personal questions, simple things like her name or her family's past. This seemed to make her very uneasy. And when the talk turned into her health, she wouldn't say a word. Now, it was clear that Doris was holding something back, something painful. The investigators, they tried to get to the bottom of it, but they were flat out stuck. 2 hours in, they thought maybe restarting might help. But that's when Doris couldn't hold it in anymore. She broke down, tears streaming down her face, her voice shaking. Doris shared the dark past that she had kept hidden, the abuse she faced as a child, the struggle she had now with drinking. It was a heavy moment, one that showed the real, raw side of her life beyond the hauntings. Now, as Doris's story unfolded, she poured out every scary detail of her encounter over the past 2 months. She recounted attacks by unseen forces within the walls of her home, being held down and assaulted by what she described as 3 ghosts. She revealed the bruising within her inner thighs as proof of the ordeal, leaving the investigators taken back by her claims. Now, despite her shocking revelations, skepticism was at an all-time high for these 2 paranormal investigators. They'd encountered similar stories in their line of work, where an individual would attribute their personal traumas from their past and turn them into supernatural causes. Now, often, these cases pointed more towards an unresolved personal issue than a genuine paranormal phenomena. Many they had met would claim to have been intimately attacked, which she had, by ghosts were usually struggling with a deep-seated trauma. They needed more professional help rather than a paranormal investigation. Now, given the nature of Doris's claim and a lack of tangible evidence of a haunting, the investigators suggested that maybe she contact a psychiatrist. In their view, the absence of clear signs of paranormal activity in her home led them to believe that maybe Doris just needed, if anything, some type of support in confronting and healing from her past traumas, rather than any kind of investigation conducted by the 2 of them. So what did they do? They left her all the contact information that she would need. But just 10 days later, after their initial visit, Doris was on the phone again, pleading with Barry and Carrie to come back and revisit the haunting. Despite their previous doubts about her mental state, Doris insisted that there was new, undeniable incidences that had occurred. This time, she wasn't the sole witness. Her claims were, if anything, now backed by friends and by neighbors who had also experienced the unexplained phenomena. Intrigued by the possibility of having multiple witnesses, Barry and Carrie decided to give Doris's case another look. And upon arriving at the house, they were greeted by a very unusual sight. A gathering of neighbors and friends right outside of her home, all of whom seemed all too eager to share their experiences. One by one, the witnesses shared very consistent stories of witnessing strange lights that seemed to hover around Doris's house before fading into the darkness. Now, these weren't just fleeting glimpses. The lights had a presence, an eerie glow that unnerved all who saw them. But it wasn't just the sights that had the neighborhood on the edge of their seats. It was a smell, a horrific odor, likened to that of decaying flesh that permeated the area, with all signs pointing back to Doris's house as a source. Now, this wasn't just a passing whiff. The stench was pervasive, hanging heavily in the air and leaving no doubt in the witness's mind about its origins. Now, faced with all of these new stories, Barry and Carrie, they had to reconsider their initial skepticism. I mean, the sheer number of witnesses, all of which their stories, they all kind of matched, and added a new layer of credibility to Doris's claims, compelling the investigators to delve deeper into the mysteries that seemed to emanate within the very walls of the home. Now, Barry and Carrie, let's be honest, they still had their fair share of doubts. But they decided to revisit Doris's home. They was curious to see if there's any kind of substance to the claims. But as soon as they entered the house, everything appeared to be ordinary. It was just another home in California. However, the atmosphere drastically shifted as they entered Doris's bedroom. Now, despite the warm summer air that was outside, there was an unnatural chill in the room. A coldness that seemed out of place in a house that had no air conditioning. Now, they attempted to measure the temperature. They pulled out their thermometers, but it showed natural readings. Now, for them, they knew that this was not true. They could feel it. They could feel the coldness in the air. As they continued their investigation, guess what else popped up? A foul odor that began to assault their senses. Now, this confirmed the witness's report of a smell of decay This noxious scent seemed to move through the house in waves, but it was also impossible to find the source. Baffled but determined, they returned to the kitchen to press Doris with more questions. Now, they was acknowledging that there was something that was going on within the house. Now, their skepticism was put to the test in the kitchen. Mid-conversation, cabinet door swung open without a warning. But just as impressive, a frying pan lifted off of the counter by an unseen force and was then hurled across the room to land with a clatter. Now, the investigators, they tried their best to remain composed. That's a whole lot better than I probably would have done. They searched for any kind of sign of trickery that could explain the flying cookware. Probably be the first thing I would do. I would not want a frying pan to the face. Now, they inspected the cabinet for any kind of wires or any kind of mechanism that might suggest a hoax, but their search turned up empty. No strings, no springs, nothing that could account for what they just witnessed. Now, this incident marked a turning point in their investigation. What they had observed defied logical explanation. It challenged their very skepticism and forced them to consider the possibility of a genuine paranormal activity within Doris's home. All of a sudden, Doris said that she could see a spirit. It was going through the very spot where Carrie and Barry was. Now, Carrie and Barry, they couldn't see anything, but with camera in hand, they asked Doris to tell them exactly where the spirit was. Now, Doris walked with the investigators through her home. Now, even though they was unable to see the spirits themselves, they saw the genuine fear etched in Doris's face. Carrie started snapping photos wherever Doris would point. Now, interestingly enough, while the rooms appeared completely normal to the naked eye, the photographs would tell a completely different story. Images taken where Doris said that the spirit had gone, was no longer there. It looked just the way it was supposed to. But those that was captured when Doris said, the spirit's right there, they were completely distorted. Driven by these unsettling findings, the investigators dedicated the following days to an intensive examination of the house. The phenomena that they encountered, it grew increasingly bizarre. There was trails of what appeared to be plasma that zipped through the hallways and the bedrooms, with a very particular interest in Doris's room. Now, per Carrie and Barry, lights would dart across space, too quick to be fully grasped by the human eye. It was just as though it was maybe like a reflection. So they covered all the windows and took away any extra light that they had found. Now, this only seemed to intensify the phenomena. With the lights, they would come into appearance and they would appear very vivid, more pronounced. They had a glow to them. Next, they came up with a brilliant idea of hanging black poster boards to document the fleeting lights. Now, when they would take new photos, it captured a very chilling scene. In one of the photos, Doris was cowering on her bed as an arc of light hovered ominously above. Now, the investigators theorized that these orbs were moving at speeds too fast for the camera shutter to capture them, so they would always show as a streak of just light. Now, one day, they saw the orbs form into what appeared to be a human figure, an apparition that gestured as though trying to communicate before vanishing before anyone could capture any kind of photographic evidence. Now, the investigators, Barry and Carrie, they didn't always stay in the house. They would occasionally leave and then come back. Well, one night, Barry received a very startling call. Doris, she was panic-stricken. She was calling in the dead of night. Her voice was laced with fear, and it was just barely, if anything, noticeable coming through the phone. You see, Barry and Carrie had meticulously put these bolts in the windows just to secure them, keep them from coming open. It was not uncommon for the window to just bust open, so they put these bolts right into the window. Well, according to Doris, they'd been violently ripped out. She said that they were launched through the air, and they just barely missed her. Now, the investigators, they had their doubts. Could Doris, with such a small figure, have managed such a feat on her own to pull those bolts out? To them, it seemed almost impossible. Now, the investigators, they couldn't help themselves. They said that they would come right over. So Barry and Carrie armed themselves with more sophisticated equipment, including a high-speed film camera, as well as a Geiger counter. As they got back to the house, it greeted them with a spectacle of glowing orbs, weaving through the air above everyone that was present. Attempts to measure activity using the Geiger counter came up negative. The orbs left no trace on that device, but the rotting smell of decay, it filled the air. Its source, it was as elusive as ever. They did notice that certain types of music would intensify the paranormal activity, which prompted the investigators to attempt communication. They asked for a sign, and it was given. They were met with a bolt that was flying through the air with such violence, and then striking Doris right in her head. Luckily, it caused no serious injury. Now the paranormal activity continued to escalate. Another bolt flew with malicious intent, just barely missing its target. Now the investigators, they could no longer deny what was going on in this house. Let's be honest, Doris's home had become a hotspot of paranormal activity, and the forces, they seemed intent on causing harm. Now Barry's experiences suggested this might just be a poltergeist at play. Now that theory was supported by the chaotic and targeted nature of the disturbances. Doris's teenage son brought up a very chilling story, claiming to have seen his mother attacked by an invisible force, an assault so powerful it flung him across the room. As the investigation deepened, a troubling pattern emerged. The paranormal activity intensified when Doris would start drinking, which suggested possibility linked to her emotional state, as well as the manifestations. This connection between the two raised questions about the nature of the hauntings. Were they fueled by Doris's own turmoil? The investigators thought that maybe her emotional and her psychological state might be playing into the phenomena. Now, after an intense 10-week investigation marked by fluctuating levels of paranormal activity, the disturbances at Doris's house began to slow. It kind of came to a halt. Carrie and Barry, along with some associates that they had come in, experienced nights that was filled with an eerie calm, which was a very stark contrast to the chaos that had been, if anything, a part of this house. Now, despite their attempts to communicate with the spirits, the phenomena genuinely completely stopped. Now, occasionally, things would pick up, but typically the violent outbursts were aimed at Doris, no one else in the home. Now, with the decrease in activity, Doris seized the opportunity to get a fresh start. She gathered all of her belongings, and she left all the troubles of Culver City right behind her, seeking a renewed peace in Carson, California. Now, I pretty much think that anyone can understand where Doris is coming from. She just wanted to be a normal woman with a normal life and living that with her kids. She was sick and tired of hearing about the paranormal, the investigations. She was tired of being seen as weird by those around her. And in the weeks that followed, she distanced herself from the investigators, perhaps hoping to sever ties with that past. However, her peace was short-lived despite Doris's hope for a new beginning. The familiar unsettling manifestations of poltergeist activity resurfaced in her new home. Kitchenware took flight. Doors operated without human intervention. Appliances, they sprung to life on their own. The haunting had followed her, a shadow from which seemed to be no escape. Now, Carrie and Barry, they were able to locate Doris, but she was very reluctant to allow this to happen again. She was determined to maintain her privacy, as well as to prevent the stigmata attached to her experience at the last residence. Doris, let's be honest, she was reluctant to draw attention to her situation. This time, she required the investigators hide their intent by hiding their equipment in the briefcases to avoid arousing the curiosity of unsuspecting neighbors. She didn't need that in her life again. Now, as the investigators returned, their task was not just to document, but to seek some type of understanding, to unravel the mystery of a haunting that refused to be left behind, and most importantly, to offer Doris the support she needed to navigate the unseen forces that continued to disrupt her life. The unsettling presence that had haunted her in Culver City made itself known once again. Carrie and Barry set up audio equipment in the living room, as well as in the bedrooms, hoping to capture evidence of the unseen force that had relentlessly pursued Doris. Their efforts, They were soon validated when a vase shattered on the floor. Audio playback revealed even more disturbing evidence. The hope that her move had left the hauntings behind dissolved, leaving her feeling more like a subject of study than a person seeking peace. Overwhelmed by the relentless pursuit of the paranormal energy, Doris moved again, this time to San Bernardino. Yet, the familiar disturbances followed. Toilets flushing without a cause, objects moving on their own. Doris was desperate for an escape, so she decided to leave California, hoping to find peace away from the reach of the hauntings. Amidst this turmoil, rumors swirled about Doris's experiences, including sensational and dubious claims that she had been impregnated by a ghost. You heard that right. Someone said that. Now, this rumor was exactly the kind of speculation that Doris sought to escape. Her journey was just marked for an unyielding quest to just have peace and quiet, but continued to be overshadowed by both paranormal activity and the whispers of those who misunderstood her struggles. Now let's just pause for a second. Let's think about this. Do I believe that she was impregnated by a ghost? No. But if you're the guy, probably shouldn't say this, if you're the guy and you know all of this is going on, why would you ever think this is a good idea? Hey baby, what you got going on? Oh, I like warm walks on the beach, and oh yeah, I got this ghost potential demon infestation thing going on. Wow. Doris wanted to avoid the hauntings that had overshadowed her life. So, she made her way to Texas, where she slipped beyond the reach of the investigators who had been so deeply involved in her case. It was during this time the finishing touches was put on her book about the experiences. It was titled The Entity. Now, the author was absolutely convinced about this story. In fact, he went to Carrie and Barry, curious about their unfulfilled ambitions regarding the investigation. Now, Barry, he wanted to take a more scientific approach. He wanted to recreate Doris's living environment, but this time inside a laboratory setting. Now, this controlled space would have had the latest and greatest outfitting of thermal imaging cameras, as well as devices capable of detecting electromagnetic activity, allowing for an exhaustive examination of the phenomena. Now, obviously, Doris had turned her back on any kind of further experimentation, but the book, it eventually caught the attention of 20th Century Fox, which then transformed Doris's harrowing tale into a cinematic narrative with the same name, The Entity, released in 1982. Now, Barry and Carrie were brought on board as technical advisors for the film, lending their expertise to ensure the authenticity that it portrayed. The movie's release, nearly a decade after the initial hauntings, marked a milestone in the saga of Doris Bither. Now, remarkably, Doris emerged from her seclusion to attend a screening for the film. She expressed both a mixture of appreciation as well as concern. She liked most of the movie, but she feared the renewed attention that it might attract. Above all, Doris just yearned for tranquility, to move beyond the shadows of her past experiences. The lucky encounter at the movie screening would be the very last time that Barry and Carrie saw Doris. She returned to Texas, seeking the quiet life that had escaped her for so long. The story of Doris Bither was marked by its transition from a deeply personal struggle to a subject of public fascination, remains a testament to the enduring search for understanding in the face of the unknown. Doris Bither, she passed away in 1995, at the very young age of 58, leaving behind a legacy wrapped in a mystery as well as debate. Now, despite the enduring fascination with her story, skepticism remains, particularly concerning the claims of an intimate assault by a supernatural entity. Now, Barry has expressed doubts suggesting that these experiences might just stem from repressed trauma rather than paranormal activity. Now, while, if anything, he's willing to give Doris the benefit of the doubt, the absence for him of concrete evidence beyond the bruising of her inner thighs has left him unconvinced. Now, following Doris's death, Brian has also revealed her struggles with drinking, substance abuse, as well as an interest in the occult, which he believes may have made her much more susceptible to the haunting. Brian, he also mentioned that not only his mother had been attacked, but also all of the children in the household. These assaults range from being pushed, being scratched, as well as being bitten, with the manifestations varying from highly detailed apparitions to barely perceivable shapes. Growing up in such an environment was understandably traumatic, reinforcing Brian's certainty of the reality of these spirits. Doris's case remains one of the most compelling, but also one of the most debated in paranormal research, marked by the eerie phenomena of the green flashes of plasma that has defied explanation. In fact, Barry has been on more than 4,000 cases throughout his career. He regards Doris's haunting as one of the three most convincing, as he would put it, a Mount Everest amongst his investigations. The persistence and clarity of the green orb stand out in particular as being fascinating. For him, it suggests the potential for a future where the realms of science, spirituality, and the paranormal will converge, offering tangible proof of phenomena currently thought of as being on the fringe of science. Despite the skepticism and hoaxes that often cloud the field of paranormal study, he maintains that objective scrutiny can reveal a genuine evidence of otherworldly phenomena. Three main theories have emerged to explain the hauntings experienced by Doris. One being that she dabbled in the occult, which may have opened doorways that she did not want opened. Another suggests that Doris herself possessed what's thought of as telekinetic abilities. This inadvertently became a beacon or a catalyst for spiritual manifestations. Now, skeptics, they lean more towards a psychological explanation, theorizing that the hauntings, they were just external projections of Doris's deep-seated traumas and experiences with abuse. When the veil between our world and the unknown is pierced, the experience for the victim is as real as it gets. Based on the compelling collection of evidence and witness accounts, it seems that there are indeed some genuine paranormal experiences that occurred within Doris's home. Now, there is some things that I'm going to write a blog on that I feel like everyone should also look at. Some skeptical proofs that might make sense of some of the photos. It doesn't really make sense to the rest of it, but it might be worth looking at. But today, before we part ways, I'd like to extend a huge thank you for tuning in to today's episodes. If you found our journey into the unknown as intriguing as I did, please take a moment to rate our podcast wherever you prefer to listen to it. Your feedback is not only just a way to support us, but it also helps fellow seekers of the unknown to find us. And if you still have an appetite for a little bit more, I invite you to join my buddy Nick and I on our other podcast, Deceptive Reality. Each week we delve deep into the world's most perplexing unsolved mysteries, exploring the thin lines between reality and deception. It's a journey you won't want to miss. As we close this chapter and the shadows retreat to their hidden corners, remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction, and the stories that we tell are but whispers of the vast unknown that surround us. Until next time, keep questioning, keep wondering, and as always, keep searching for the elusive truth. Till I see you guys next time, goodbye.